Hi, everybody. Come on in, get comfortable, get all your settings correct and all that good stuff. Welcome to our second Patterns and Success drum major training. This one is called Defining Your Strengths. For those of you who didn't get to join us last Thursday, I believe it was, we did an introductory conducting session, which I think we still have the video online, and you can go to Music for All and check that out. We are really excited to get to connect with so many of you. There are about 400 of you that are coming in today to talk with us about some of the leadership things, especially when you're looking at trying leadership for the first time. But even for those of you who have done it for 2 or 3 years, this is always a good refresher that I like to go through about every 4 or 5 years to make sure that I've got the base together. And the reason I say that is because this is kind of the quintessential leadership section. There are things in this that if any part of it is left out, none of the other stuff matters. Being able to, march faster, play louder, play higher, none of that matters if this original material isn't in place. As you come in, you're going to notice that you've got the Wando drum majors up there joining us again. There's Caroline and Anna and Audrey and Gavin. And there's a senior and 3 juniors that are there. So they've been around for a little while and have done incredible things with our program. They deal with a lot of stuff that I have no idea about, which is great. They are so proactive. They usually think of things before I do and send me text messages to consider them before I even know what's going on. So that would be one of the things that if you have questions that maybe you don't feel comfortable sharing with the director of somebody, it might be good to just throw one at them, and they'll do their very best to answer as many of those questions as we can as we go through. So, and this, of course, also thanks to Cecily up there as well for setting this all up and being our technical advisor and allowing us to make this go. And thanks to everybody at Music for All for allowing us to do these sessions. I hope this finds you well. We're all in about week 3 or 4 of quarantine right now. For us at Wando, this is spring break. Which feels a lot like everything else, except we don't have quite as much work to do during the day. So I hope you're enjoying yourselves as well and enjoying the season of the year. It's beautiful down here in Mount Pleasant. I think we're at 70 degrees right now. I hope you're getting to enjoy some time as well. So let's dive right into this. I'm going to share a presentation with you that I hope will guide our talks along the way and maybe even give you some food for thought as you're going through some things. So defining your strengths, I think this is imperative for any leader to kind of start thinking about what do I do best for myself. Number 2, what do I do better than most other people? You know, it may be something that you don't necessarily enjoy, but you just happen to do it better than anyone else. And 3, what does my band need? What strength do we need to really fulfill our place and make our band better? So to do that, to kind of dive into those 3 questions, I wanted to give you the idea of the complete student leader. Like, what are they made up of? The first thing, the cornerstone of this, we kind of think of it as a triangle or 3 pieces of a pie. The first one of those is most important, and it's character. How well do you carry yourself? Is your word important? Are your actions honorable? Those kinds of things. That sounds a little cliche, but the longer I teach and the more people I'm around, the more I find that this is incredibly important to what we do. So I'm going to be asking a lot of tough questions today, and I hope you're ready. Luckily, nobody can see you, so it really is just about you getting inside your own heart and in your own head and trying to answer those questions for yourself. Character, point number 1. Point number 2 is content. That's like the idea of, what can I do? Is it marching? Is it color guard? Is it percussion? Is it just straight up performance? What do I bring to the musical side of my band that makes us better? And sometimes that's a little bit overlooked. I've had several students over the years that are great people and they can talk a good game, but they don't play their instrument or they don't perform very well. And that's a really crucial part to what we're doing. So for some of you, you're going to look at that piece and know, I've got to work on that over the next few weeks. The last one is communication. All of them are so important, and each 3 of these have to be in a great equilibrium to make stuff go. For me, I feel communication is the idea of while I can have great ideas and while I can do my stuff well, how can I engage others? And it's not just about talking. It's actually a whole lot more about that, which we'll dive into a little bit later. So finding your strengths, we first have to look at your character, your content, your musicianship, and your communication skills. So let's dive right in. When I think about character, I think about self-leadership. That's what you do. You know, there's a great poster, leadership is what you do when no one else is watching. We talk at Wando that there's someone always watching. I want you to think back over your first year in band and think about the times that you observed things you learned how to be in your high school band about the first week of band camp or whatever you did first in the year. You didn't learn it by someone telling you, you learned it by observation. You saw how people treated one another, you saw what they did, and that's what made you do what you do now. There isn't some magic formula of all bands do this or some bands don't do that. We all have the same kind of things that pull us away from trying to do great stuff. For me, like for example, when I started band in high school, everyone called the director sir. I had never been around that before, never been around a military family or anything, but it got in my head and I noticed for the next 4 years, I called my band director. I still do that now to people I show respect to. So they're the little subtle hints that we do that show people our character. It's not the big things, it's the little things that we do. When I think about leadership and character, I use the acronym WHO, and it stands for who should lead. So if you take each one of the letters and kind of parcel them out, the first one I cheat on. I'm going to put it out there right front. I like to use the word awareness. Those who are aware of other things around. This is a skill. It is not a trait. It's something that you have to work on just as much as you work on breathing exercises, range exercises, and flexibility. I found that in our quarantine state, my level of awareness keeps getting smaller and smaller and smaller because the number of people I'm around every day is smaller and smaller. Even as I do this, I'm getting more accustomed to not being able to see your faces and I'm just looking at a computer screen. Whereas when I teach, I love looking people in the eye. My students at Wanda will tell you that one of my favorite things is to say, give me your eyes. Because I love to be aware of people's reactions to what I'm saying and I can kind of gauge where we're going. I'm not as savvy about that anymore. I would ask you, are you aware of how your band operates? Are you aware of anybody that kind of monopolizes your band and sort of bullies everything around? Are you aware of people in your band that have no voice right now? They don't feel like they have a voice. Maybe they're often overlooked. You have to be aware of those people before you can almost be aware of yourself. It's a cycle that you have to start allowing other people to affect you, and you then can affect others. So start to think right now, who in my band is the heartbeat? Who in my band is the person that if we were like that person, we would have the most amazing band ever? Kind of hard to think about, isn't it? It may be you, but I bet you can also find somebody else. Now, can somebody in your band that you have no idea their story. You don't know very much about them. Maybe they're in your section. You don't know very much about them. You don't know whether they're a child from divorce, have two parents at home, have siblings, anything. Yet there's somebody who you're wanting to lead. And you see, that's really important when you start to deal with others who are affecting yourself. So start to raise your level of awareness, and I'll have something on that in just a second. Those who are honest. That's the bottom line of all of this. If you get nothing out of these sessions, I'm going to ask you that you really try to focus on being honest. And the most important one of those is being honest with yourself. Most of the time when I work with leaders, adult and student, there is a set of denial. There's a stage of denial that comes up to where I've even done a thing where I videotaped a session for one band and showed them how they interacted with one another. And they didn't believe me when I analyzed it. And then I threw the video up on the screen, and they had to acknowledge it really quickly. It's amazing what we can do when we think no one is watching. But like I told you in the beginning, someone's always watching and learning from you. Your level of honesty with yourself is paramount to being a great leader. And then the last one, those who are open to change. I think one of the things that happens in good bands, great bands, bad bands, wherever, we get really stuck in a rut. This is the way we've always done. And that's the easiest way to always get what you've always gotten. You know, the great statement is, if you always do what you've always done, you'll always get what you've always gotten. That is one of the truest axioms of all time. I encourage you to start to be able to open up yourself to new ideas. I'll give you a great example. I remember one of the first pieces I played in high school band. We all hated it. It was terrible. We thought it was just the worst piece ever. It didn't come together very quickly. It didn't seem to work very well out on the field. And I remember my band director coming to us and saying, hey, look, if you play, it was our closer, if you play this piece really well at this contest, we'll take it out of the show because we're not competing anymore. We were all like, yay, we did this great job to work and learn it. And midway through that process, we kind of realized, hey, this is getting a lot better. It's a lot better than what we thought it was before. We performed the heck out of it at this contest we went to. And by the time we were done, we actually decided we didn't want to give it up. We wanted to keep it there. That piece was somewhere from West Side Story. When I look back at that right now, that piece by Leonard Bernstein, if you don't know West Side Story, that's a major quarantine trip that you need to take because it's awesome. But I remember now thinking how I can't believe I hated that piece of music. It was because I wasn't open to it. We were used to doing kind of pop tunes and stuff like that, and it didn't work at the same way. I would invite you to be open to some of the changes we're going to talk about. So let's go into this idea of awareness, being honest, and being open. So I've got a couple of questions that are flashing up on the screen right now. Some of them are pretty deep. Who are you? Well, really what I'm asking you is, what are your strengths and weaknesses? If I ask you to write down 2 each right now, could you do it? Just think through right now, 2 strengths, 2 weaknesses. And you know what? Even though it's politically incorrect to say weakness, I'm weak right now during all of this. So I'm happy to admit it. I hope I don't offend anybody, but what are you weak about? What are you strong about? Take just a minute right now and literally write those down. Grab a sheet of paper, grab something, and write it down. I feel like I should have background music right now. That's note for later. Have background music when I ask you to write something. The second set of that is, who are you to the band? And here's the real question. How do you make the band better? And if you say, I play my instrument well, that's great. That's level 1. But there's got to be more. Because if you're wanting to be a leader, you're doing the bare minimum. It's like getting your name right on the AP exam. There's got to be more to it than that. How do you make the band better? So what are some possible ways we could do that? You could bring a positive attitude. You could be the person that always fills up water. You could be the person that keeps other people from fighting. You could be the person that always brings donuts on Friday, which Wando students, note to you, the person that always brings donuts on Friday. Just throwing it out there into the universe in case anybody gets that idea. How do you make the band better? What do you do that goes above and beyond the typical band member? And then that last one, open. How easily can you adapt to change? I have to move these guys around because they're covering my slide. Just a second. You can see that last over there. Will you be allowed to be comfortable with outside influences? And how far will you let yourself change and adapt? For those of you that may go through a new director, that's a tough time. It really is. I've only been at Wando for 6 years, and I can remember that first year vividly. It was tough for a lot of people, including myself. So remembering that the adults are going through change as well. Some of you will have students graduate that you feel like we can't exist if we don't have this person. I can tell you that my high school is still going strong several years after I've graduated. So just think about those questions and answers as we go through the rest of this. While you're continuing to think, I just wanted to show you this. My biggest contention is that students, people, are very unaware at times. They're not aware of paying attention to what's going on. I've got this awareness test that I want you to watch while you're finishing your questions up.
This is an awareness test. How many passes does the team in white make? Go! The answer is 13. But did you see the moonwalking bear?
Right here, look at your screen. He's right in the center right now. This is a great commercial from the 90s. Look out for cyclists. Awesome. Awesome. As I watch that every year, it takes me back to seeing it for the very first time where I had no idea what I was watching for. There are a couple of those on the internet that are pretty fun. But there are folks that are in your band that are smart. There are folks that are there that are caring. There are folks that are there that are incredible musicians. There are also folks that are there who are hurting. There are folks that are there who are lonely. There are folks who are there that are dealing with family stuff. There are folks that are there that are dealing with death. As the leader, one of your main charges is to make sure that you keep an eye out for those folks. Sometimes that's bringing the director into it, but it's also making sure that we can help them and engage them. And sometimes it's you, and you're being able to, as we'll talk about later, communicate about what you're feeling and experiencing. So with this idea of awareness, you've got to go around this circle, knowing yourself, be prepared, don't speak. That's a tough one. Like in my sessions, when I let people take over and they start to try and run different small groups, it's really hard at first because they want to just talk and take over. But to allow others the chance to find the answers for themselves is tough and challenging. When I work with teachers, this is one of the worst things that we do. We want you to get to the answer really fast the way we did. But I found over the years that's not the right way to go. It's more just to speak and be aware, interact with people, ask questions. That one thing down there at the bottom, it's kind of the idea of finding one thing about somebody. Like, what's one thing that I can know about you today? Now, you can't do this with everybody, but it can be one of those things where rehearsal's getting ready to start. You've got a couple of minutes with your section. Okay, here's my one thing for the day. For example, at Wando, we'll sometimes have good things, like what's happening good in your life. And the people will go around the classroom and say, here's something I want to share. And I remember the first time that I saw that, I didn't think it was going to work very well. But the more one of our directors does that every class period, it works great. Just those little things to let people know that you are aware of them is huge. So I've got these questions here to kind of help you with that. And like I said, Music for All has this keynote, and you can get it from them later, but you can also go back and watch this video and go through this. But check out the questions that I've had. I'm gonna give you just a minute to maybe look at those. I'm going to focus more on that third one, don't speak, the one thing. Try to observe with your eyes rather than your words. I know that sounds kind of silly, but we can't observe if we're talking. We can't observe if we're in our friend group and never get outside it. So just watch. On a water break, just commit to, I'm going to watch around and see who sticks out to me. Something will. Watch for actions, watch for interactions, and watch for reactions. What I mean by that is look, find the loner. There's always one. Find the person that's always laughing. Find the people that are always making fun of others. Find those folks so you kind of know the lay of the land. If you're thinking about yourself, think about what you do during water breaks. Did you go to your friend group and kind of hang out each time? That has to stop so that you can be a better leader. Not all the time, but you have to open yourself up to new things. And take a look at the very bottom one. Actively listen or actively observe is probably even better there. Who's hurting? Who's in need? What can you do? Now, here's going to be the thing that breaks the internet right now. Do you know how most people show that they're hurting? Act like a jerk. Act like they don't care. Act like they hate band. All the people that you hate to deal with, there's probably a reason why they're acting the way that they're acting. Something hurts them. Home life could be bad. They feel very inadequate. Something. The folks that you know of who come to band and seem like, why don't they just quit? They just keep coming back to band. Why don't they just quit? Because secretly they do like it there and they're crying for help. And the only way they know how to cry for help is to get attention. Let me make fun of people. Let me do this. Let me do that. And if you look at the way that they act as more of an infliction, like more of a symptom of an illness, the more you can start to treat it, as opposed to the more you can fight somebody who doesn't do what you think they should be doing. So think about right now that most difficult person in band. What if I told you that that person has something really bad going on in their life and it's not going away anytime soon? Would that change the way that you perceived them? See, what it would do is it would change your level of empathy. Now, not sympathy. Sympathy is being able to understand someone. Empathy is being able to feel what they're feeling. I bet you've gone through something really crappy and you weren't quite ready to go do 8 to 5s across the field. All of us have, me included. What could you have used on those days to help? And maybe it's time to reach out to that worst person and find out what their story is. Raising our level of empathy. Do you understand that by understanding others, we ultimately understand ourselves and figure out who can lead? Character, there's so many things that go into character, so many things that you could talk about. That's a whole class, really, civics. However, we don't have that much time, so I've got to keep moving. The bottom line with character is the more you try to understand others, the more I think you try to understand yourself. And if you'll spend some time thinking about how I can help and influence others, you'll start to find out what you're good at. The next one down here is content. This is the musical side of what we do, the performance side of what we do. And Color Guard members, please don't think that I think any differently of you. You are just as much an artist as any musician, as any player, as any whatever name here. You just show you are physically an embodiment of what the sound is on the field. So you're the best picture we have to represent what we're about. So I hope that when you hear me say musician, artist, I'm always including Color Guard in that. So content, what do I have to offer? Take that as an acronym as well. The WHAT. This one I did pretty well on. I didn't have to cheat on any of the words whatsoever. What can I give people? People are in band for certain motivations. Number one, there's a want for music. There's a desire to really share musical expression with the world. I got to tell you, that's a small number. Those are the kids that, like, no matter how bad the director, no matter how bad the trips, no matter how bad the band, they're going to be there because they love music. There's a genuine want. that's there. The second set of people are because they like band makes them happy. They have their friends that are there, which is the largest reason why people stay in band, because their friend group is there. It brings happiness to them. They enjoy the trips. They enjoy going and doing. They enjoy performing in front of thousands of people. If you know those two motivations, you can start to kind of work with and for those people. And here's how you do it. You start to use an attention to detail and tradition. So if you take all of those and say, what can I give? You may have to touch on one of these four places. And some of you will be really good at some of you will be good at all of them. Finding their wants, finding what makes them happy, having an attention to detail, which raises the quality, or having a tradition that binds us all together. Let me see if I can unpack that just a little bit for you. If you think about this, I can get you to find those things, those motivations for band this way. What would make someone wish to join your band? Like when you meet somebody or somebody moves into the area, why do you tell them that they should join band? Some of you may say, I don't tell them that. Shame on us. If it's not something great, we better get busy trying to make it great. It's not a director's job. It's not a school's job. It's us as the members. It's our role to help make it better than it was. So what would make someone wish to join your band? Can you write something down right now? Imagine the Jeopardy theme music playing in the background. Okay, and Tiffany just played the last couple of notes. What would make someone wish to join your band? If you don't quite have that answer yet, I hope you'll spend some time thinking through that. You can't find your strengths until you know your band's strengths. What's a point of pride for the band? Everywhere I go across the country, I have asked this question and I've gotten all kinds of answers. And you know what? Very few of them have to do with winning trophies. One that I remember vividly was their band camp tradition. Every year they have a competition to see who can get the most pride points. And those pride points can come from a lot of different ways. But the biggest one is the last day, right before, actually band camp starts at 9, but at 8 o'clock, they have a section pride display. The band room is kind of cordoned off for each section, and people have to show their section pride with whatever theme they get. One year, a flute section in a great band that I work with decided that they were going to do different holidays of the year. And they decided for that last day, it was going to be Christmas. Okay, so you walk in and the flute section are all dressed as elves. They hired a Santa impersonator to come and sit in a big chair to take people's gift ideas. They had velvet rope that lined you off and you had to get in line to go sit in Santa's lap. And then they had bags of treats and candy canes for everybody who came through their line. That was a point of pride for them, and I think that's awesome. There's one group that said they did things for their football team each week, which good for you. I've never been in a situation like that, but that's awesome. For some, it was bus rides. One of the points of pride in my high school band was every time we came back from a game or a competition, there was a set of railroad tracks about a mile away. And no matter what time, we all stood up and sang the school alma mater as we pulled into the parking lot. I can remember it being 2 and 3 o'clock in the morning and being so tired that everybody stood. It was a point of pride. Later on, we're going to talk a little bit about tradition, and it'll come into play there. But what's a point of pride in your band? What's one thing happening now that needs to stop? When I came to Wando, I can tell you what it was. There was a feeling of disconnect from members. They felt that their commitment to the band only went so far as to what it gave them personally. So if I had to miss rehearsal, no big deal. We went through that entire season never having even 98% attendance for any rehearsal, including the day before we left for Grand Nationals. Now, I would tell you that's a very different thing. Sure, we still have absences, but we always have communication from people. And the drum majors will tell you, I usually know or they know what's going on. And when we don't, it's rare. And we usually find out there was a bit of an emergency that happened. When it doesn't, though, that's a pretty big point for us to talk through. We care about each other, not just for us, but for each other. And we want to make sure that we're taken care of. Are you that caring? What's one thing in your band that needs to stop? And maybe you need to be the one that stops it. What are the traditions of your band? Now, I went through this with one band who will remain nameless, and we had talked about all these things. And I said, what are some traditions that you feel really make you strong? Kid raised his hand real fast. Go ahead. Because every year we go away to band camp, we get in these cabins, and all of the non-freshmen sneak outside the first night at midnight, and we pull the fire alarm, and we make the freshmen run out there, and we just laugh at them for thinking that was a fire alarm. It's like, okay, that's interesting. What's another tradition that just hands shot in the air? What's another tradition? Person said on the way, after we do that first night, the next morning we go to the practice field for the first time, and all the seniors stand with a plastic spatula, and we hit everybody on the back or on the butt as they go to the rehearsal for the first time. They even had two more that I won't go into because I'm short on time, but it was a little much. You know, that question up above this, what's one thing happening now that should maybe stop? There may be some of those traditions. If they're built to demean people, that's never going to, let me say it this way, there are no great groups that have traditions built on hurting anyone, their feelings or their physical nature. It just doesn't happen. So I would encourage you to start looking at that and see what are the things that you can offer to your band? What do you bring to the table? And how can you be an agent for change? Maybe it's something that's only getting started and you need to make it better. That top one is defining how people want to be there. What's going to make me want to be there? What brings happiness? What brings pride? What makes us want to be great? That third one is your attention to detail and how aware, there's that word again, you are. Are you aware of some things that may be hurting other people's feelings? And what are you going to do about it? How can we affect that to make it better? Or, let me do this last one, tradition, maybe we need to start some traditions. When I first got to Wanda, we ended each rehearsal and it kind of just went away. Now we do this thing, actually those drum majors close, I do my announcements and then I'm gone. And they actually close out rehearsal. They do a member of the week, a rookie of the week, member of the day, rookie of the day, maybe sort of, okay, some version of that. But the big one is the last rehearsal of the week, they do section of the week. And when they first did it, it wasn't that big of a deal. Now people go nuts over this thing. And there's screaming and gnashing of teeth if somebody doesn't win, who thought they should. And it's all in good fun, but they even have this stuffed animal. One year it was a unicorn. One year, I could spin different animals that have been passed around that show the spirit or the section of the week. And I have to tell you, that's actually become a thing. And the fact that the students are starting to be aware of other sections is really great. That was a tradition that wasn't there before. We also have a creed that we say to end some of our special things that we do. And that was written by a student from my very first year who I didn't think liked me very much, but I knew loved the band. It turned out she actually liked me pretty well too. But it's powerful for us to have traditions that bring us together. Maybe you need to think about starting one. This next slide is a little bit more in the leadership vein, but it's something that I'm going to talk to you about to maybe shift your thinking. Sometimes people will do goal setting stuff like, we want to set a goal for our band. We want to do this for our band. And I've never really done that. And maybe it's bad, but we've been pretty successful without it. But what I have done is said, let's build systems that we want to make sure we commit to every day to get ourselves as good as we can possibly be. There are times if I'd set a goal for this band, I would have shot too low every time. They've done stuff sooner than I ever expected, and they're pretty incredible. I love getting in front of each of our bands. Most recently, the symphonic band, being able to stand in front of them in Chicago at Midwest, and they just looked like it was effortless. It was it's an experience I will never forget. And I don't know that I set out to have that kind of concert. I just knew that every day we needed to play as if someone were always listening. We actually have Jim Keene, who comes in from Texas to listen to us. And he's got the most intense, accurate ears I've ever heard in my life. And we always sort of pretended that he was standing right behind me, giving us critical feedback. So here are some things that are just suggestions. I know we haven't gotten to communication yet, and I'm going to. That's a big, giant box that we have to look at. But as we're looking at content and how to build your content as a leader, one of the things that I would say that you need to be able to do is to engage others. You know, that character piece is about you. The content piece is about how you can interact with a small group or maybe even just one other person. So here are some examples that I would give you. Get help. Work with other leaders and get their input and share ownership. Like maybe share some of the questions that I just gave you. What's a tradition that we all feel is strong, is our best? Do we need one? It's tough. The first 3 times you do something for the first time, it's rough. By time number 4, you'll know if it's going to stick or not. Usually what happens is you start something and it adapts over time. Number 2, set the example. If asking the band to do something differently, the leader must set the gold standard for overdoing the task. Here's one of the things that I hate when I see bands do. Okay, guys, let's wrap up the break and let's go back out to the field. And you hear moans and groans. I can't stand that. And so now we actually don't even do that. The Wando folks will tell you, we usually say, let's take 3 minutes to do this, or let's take a 5-minute break. And we usually don't call them back. In fact, almost never, because I hate to hear the groans and moans. I want the students to take that responsibility themselves, and they do it beautifully. They didn't always. And so just setting the example of whenever you have to try something new, we do character blocks, like meaning that we have to pretend we're walking through Jell-O across the field. We have to pretend that we're a zombie going across the field. We don't do that so terribly well. That's still a challenge for us. It's got to be bigger next year, okay? So just Wando folks, put that in here. It's a big part of what we're going to be doing. And I'm going to call on our leaders to be in it to win it. Like you jump in both feet to go for this new thing that we have to do. It's awkward at first, for sure. We all do marching band, everybody. Pretty much everything we do is awkward because most of us are, myself included. So just embrace it and move on. Number 3, make it fun. Anything we ask the band to do, I just put new, but anything we ask them to do must make a reward by adding something fun or making the original task more appealing. I know our flutes at Wando do a thing where they bake brownies when all of their music is passed off. They pass off their music weeks before most every other section. It's awesome the way that they do that. The trumpets have different traditions and different things that they do. Like the horns they usually go visit Taco Bell after perform. Like everybody has something that they do for fun. And I think you and your section or you and your band need to have those as well. And that last one, make new things. Most new things will not work in the original forms. They must adapt and evolve, much like your leadership style. It's not going to be the same a year from now as it is right now. Be ready to change and amend the proposed system. Now, here's the biggest thing that I would advocate for right here. You need to play your instrument or work your equipment incredibly well. It's not the absolute most important, but number 1, I can tell you it makes it a lot easier for people to listen to you when you are very good at what you do. Number 2, it gives you a lot more credit, meaning that you know how to get from point A to point B to point C. You've done the work. The last thing that I would tell you is this. It's really simple. Do you want a really good band? Tim Lotzenheiser does this thing where he says, Raise your hand if you want a better band than you had last year. Well, of course, everybody raises their hand. Well, raise your hand again if you want to have the best band you've ever had. Raise your hand one last time if you want to have the best band your school has ever seen, like you're just breaking records and people are just coming out of the seats. He goes, raise your hand if you practice every day. And about 50 to 60% of the hands go down. I think we have a disconnect between what we do and why we do. We do band because we love music and want to express ourselves that way. Now, while the reason is to hang out with friends and all that stuff, I still think there's an inherent need to speak artistically. And the motivation gets really rough in September and October when music and performance aren't your motivators. If you were trying to win a trophy, come around September 25th to about October 20th, your life's going to be miserable. It's already hard enough. But when you can see the music taking shape and you can see the show becoming better and you yourself becoming a better musician because of this show, a lot of great things can happen. So I wanted to stop everything and just put in that plug right there. What's great, and I mentioned this in our conducting thing, all 4 of those drum majors right there are fantastic musicians. Each one of them does incredibly well on their instrument. Some of them do well in other genres, such as jazz. Some of them have gone to great summer camps. So, I mean, I'm so proud that our drum majors get better every fall. And you as the leader has to do the same. Think of it like this. If everybody in your band did exactly like you, did exactly what you did, prepared and practiced exactly the same as you, what kind of band would you have? That sort of changes stuff, doesn't it? These days when you're kind of laying around doing nothing and it's too hard to get your instrument out of the case, you start to think, so I'm going to hurt the band because I want to watch one more show on Netflix. Tiger King has one more episode and I got to finish it out. It'll stay, it'll be there, but could you go and get your instrument and make your band / you better? I challenge you to do that and to commit to it and see how much stronger a human being you are. See, I don't mind my kids watching Netflix and watching stuff like that and hanging out, but I always ask them, you've done that for 2 hours, what have you gained? There are certainly shows and documentaries and things where you can learn stuff. Cool. There are things I can go and do outside that make me stronger, feel better. Cool. If you can do something for 2 hours or whatever time and it makes you better, I think it's awesome. Do you need to take a break? Absolutely. Every day for 4 hours? No. And it's not work. It's more making you and your band better. End of commercial. But please make sure that your instrument is one of the most important priorities if you're even thinking about leadership. So we talked about character, who I am, and that's found by observing and working with others, finding my strengths and weaknesses. Content was, what kind of musician am I? What kind of leader can I be? How can I engage 1 to maybe 4 other people? This last one, communication, is about how can I engage a group of people? How can I engage multiple people? And how can I get my ideas to be clearly understood? And that's harder than it appears. When, where, how do I lead? So I wanted to give you some things with this to kind of consider. This is actually some questions from our Wando leadership application. I'm actually going to give you just a couple of minutes to pick maybe 2 of these, maybe 1 from each grouping, and let you answer it. Some are tough. The 3rd question in the first block is tough. The 3rd question in the 2nd block is tough. Take just a minute and think through those answers. as you're continuing to think or maybe write, I might ask you to think about communication, which also does turn into conflict management on a couple of different levels. Think of it first as you, the individual student, having conflict with yourself. Now, what I really mean by that is having conflict with maybe home, conflict with something that's going on in school, but you bring conflict or lack of commitment, whatever, to the rehearsal. How do you deal with that? What do you do? A suggestion I might give to you is just tell somebody. Finding somebody and just saying, I feel like crap today. Now, you get to do that about once every other week. You can't come 3 days in a row, or unless something pretty major has happened, saying, oh, I just feel like crap, and make it somebody else's job to help you. But if you're coming in pretty rough, it's okay to talk to somebody and say, I feel like crap today. I'm going to need your help. Maybe it's a fellow leader. Maybe it's somebody who marches next to you in the drill. Maybe it's somebody who sits next to you in band class. Hey, I feel crappy today. I need your help. People love challenges, and they may even try to make you feel better if you want them to. But just being able to say it defines it. And that's what we need sometimes. I've said that to the students before. These guys can tell you, I've been like, I don't know exactly what's wrong, but this doesn't feel right. And so we need to do this again. And most times it's me that has the problem. Well, sometimes it's them being lazy, but sometimes it's me being the problem too. It's okay to say that. Now you've got yourself to deal with, but now it's maybe the people closest to you, around you in your section or fellow leaders. How do you deal with somebody who's got conflict or bad attitude or something like that? My big suggestion for there is questions. Question everything. Don't start the conversation with, hey, you're being a insert colorful title here, but go to them and say, hey, are you okay? Is everything all right? You seem like you're really angry. Are you okay? Just that asking the question causes them to start observing what they're doing. And sometimes they'll say, yeah, I'm fine. Get off my back. Okay. Normally you don't tell me that, you don't speak to me like that, but if you're okay, I trust you. And sometimes letting people just vent for a while is exactly what they need. But sometimes you'll find somebody will just come and say, you know what? I failed math class. I got broken up with. My dad took my phone. I know. That's crappy. We just need that little bit of sympathy / empathy to make us feel slightly better and know that we belong in what we do so we can get back to the business of band. Let's think, we've talked about maybe it's the whole section in general. Have you ever had one of those rehearsals where it just seemed like everything was off? Nothing was working right? So what do? These guys will tell you, they know that it's serious when I come down from our tower. We have a pretty tall tower, and I come down, like they know it's either going to be really mean and hateful or, well, they usually go with that one first. That's sort of the thought that's there. When I come down from the tower, I've even said, are you okay? Like I remember we did a run through this last year that was just terrible. It was so bad early in a rehearsal. And we had been doing so well. And I came running down. I was like, are you okay? And they looked at me like, what are you talking about? See, from their point of view, it was going really well. We found out later they were focusing very much on the individual, what they themselves were doing, and not paying attention so much to intervals and playing together and, you know, those trite little things that we like to do in band. But we needed to get to that place first. They needed to know their spot better than anybody. And we had just gotten to that one point. We hadn't put it all together just yet. And so they were being very safe. And like once I talked to them and got their feel for how they felt, it was great. That could have been a miserable rehearsal. And I have to admit, I've made that mistake a couple of times in my career. But in going down and just saying, are you guys okay? Like, that was awful. I can remember the shock that came over. I have about 10 or 12 people that I look at first because they give me a good idea as to how everybody's feeling. And when I saw shock on their face, I was like, okay, you didn't know. So there's a perception problem. I've also had times where they've just been like, yeah, I don't know. I don't know what this is. And sometimes it's good to just sort of lay off. I've talked with these guys. Sometimes you can overteach or overwork a student. There'll be that one kid that keeps getting out of step all the time and you keep trying to correct them. We get to a place where we just need to lay off and just relax and let them be. Try and change your focus to something else and let that person, let that section, let that be what it's going to be for today. And try to find something that's good in what they're doing. That's really tough. But just saying, okay, today I'm not going to criticize one thing about this person. I'm going to actually give them a compliment when we get done. That could be a much greater challenge than correcting someone. How do you communicate with the band? Now I'm going to give you a tough one after that. How do you communicate with the adults, the staff, the directors? Do you roll your eyes often? Are you the person that when they say something, you try to make fun of that? Are you the person that always goes into a section going, hey, what did they say we're supposed to do? You can't be that person, because you see, in all of the things that we've talked about, character and content, you communicate how much of those you understand through your actions. And when you do things like, what did the director say? You basically tell me, a freshman, it's okay not to listen to the director. It's actually the right thing to not listen to a director. I have this famous story of where I had 3 leaders when I was in high school. It was my first day of band camp. And the first one, I was really super shy and went and hid in a corner. I was about 4'0" and played alto saxophone. And this tall 6' girl came over and kneeled down and talked to me, said, hi, I'm Katie, how are you? And I said, I'm Bobby, nice to meet you. And she said, well, what do you play, Bobby? I play saxophone. Oh, that's great. Come on, I want to introduce you to somebody. If she hadn't came to get me, I would probably still be sitting there hiding in that corner right now. But she went and introduced me to the saxophone section leaders. And this was the biggest thing that she did that day. She said, Bobby, I'm going to leave you with them, but I'm going to find you at lunch and check in on you and see how you're doing. I hope you have a great first day in our band. Guys, I'm 44 years old, and I was, let's see, I was in 8th grade when that happened. So however old you are there, around 13, 14. And I remember that just as clearly as I can today, as I see this computer sitting in front of me. She introduced me to Jamie and Josh. Josh is a little bit the villain in this. Josh was the guy that always made fun of everybody, always had a joke. Whenever the director said something, he said something under his breath. And it taught me very quickly that I shouldn't take the director very seriously. One time I was called out for running back to my spot, which was good. He was like, why is Bobby Lambert, the 8th grader, one of the only people running back to his spot? Let's take a lesson from him. Everybody was nice and applauded, and that was great. But Josh ran by me and said, hey, thanks for making us all look like crap. And so I learned very quickly, don't run. Even when the director says run it back, you don't run. I had been praised by the adult, but it only took one comment from a peer to make me not do it again the rest of that year. He made fun of us. He did all kinds of things. And it was pretty awful. In fact, he came back the next year. And when I saw him there at band camp the next year, he was a senior and failed. When I saw him there again the next year, I walked out and quit band that day. But that'll be a story for another time, because Josh isn't the villain in this. Let me introduce you to the third person, Jamie. Jamie was a good guy, nice kid. I knew his family. We went to the same elementary school, and he was only about 3 or 4 years older than me. I knew him. He was Josh's best friend. And I can remember going to him in tears one time after a football game because of all the stuff that Josh had said to me, saying, I need your help. You have to make this stop. I can't deal with him. And Jamie's response was, it's no big deal. That's how you know he likes you, when he makes fun of you. He's just kidding. Don't take it so seriously. See, that's what a lot of leaders do. They talk a good game, but when it comes down to it, they don't do the right things. They don't put the band's well-being above their own sense of embarrassment. They would rather the band be bad than for them to feel uncomfortable for even just a few minutes. And those are the strengths and weaknesses that you need to find. How can you overcome that unwillingness to be uncomfortable for the good of others? I got to tell you, this is so hard for me. I hate this. I hate not being able to look in people's faces. But I love doing this because I think it's helping people, and I hope it does you. Find that thing that you are really uncomfortable with and try to get comfortable with it. Truth is that it will never be comfortable, but you can act. We have a great saying at Wando, fake it till you make it. And I'm doing that right now. And I think we've all been doing that during this quarantine. I hope that these things help you find out what your strengths and weaknesses are. Just so that you have it, here are the other parts of our leadership application this year. And it has what we ask about character and what we ask about content. Just so you can have it when you go back and watch this video and you can pause it right here. Character is what you do when no one is watching and someone's always watching. It is how you work inside yourself and how aware, how honest, and how open you are. Content deals with the what of our band, the wants and desires of the group, the happiness of the group, the attention to detail, getting everything just right, those toes up at the right angle, those elbows at the right angle, the catches at the exact right time, and then traditions that bring us closer together to greatness and to each other. And then communication. How and why do we do what we do? Why are you wanting to be a leader? If you answer that question, I guarantee you'll find some strengths and weaknesses that you can explore. I really appreciate all of you coming and being with us. Thank you to our drum majors from Wando for being here and answering the questions. Really hope that you've gotten something good out of this. If you have, maybe write us and drop us a line on Facebook or something. You can go to Music for All and post something there if you'd like. If you have any thoughts about future presentations, we'd be happy to do that. I guarantee you, several of you have asked some questions throughout this, and I bet our drum majors are working on them. They look like they're typing right now and working on some of those. So please feel free to keep going with that. In fact, what I may do is see if there are any of them that I can help you with. Haha. Ooh, that's a great one about positive rehearsal culture. I think that's awesome. So one of the things that you'll have to realize is that change comes slowly. People are like an iceberg. It takes a long time for movement and change. So while you're saying, seems like nobody's liking this, you know, you may have to be committed to that for more than a year even. I know that doesn't sound great for those of you who are seniors, but that's what it is. I would tell you that the rehearsal etiquette and change at Wando is different. And each year we get a little bit better, but it goes slowly. It just does. Maybe it's something that you want to ask your band director. If you ask your band director, what's one thing you would like for us to do differently at rehearsal? I bet they'll get on board with that change with you. So I hope that that helps a little bit. Cecily, they're asking, will this question stuff be saved anywhere, or is it gone forever? She's looking right now, and I think that we can save it, if I'm not mistaken.
I believe so. If you want to keep answering some questions, let me quickly look into that, because it should be saved, but let me make sure that the settings are saved correctly.
Sure. So if it's okay with everybody, I'm just going to go a little bit further with these and look through some of them. Hey, majors, is there any one that you saw that maybe I should look at? You remember to unmute yourself and tell me if there's one that you think I should do. While you're thinking about it, I see one right there that I want to look at. As a drum major, how do you know you're doing too much or too little as a leader? How can you gauge that? That's a super great question, because I think I ask that as myself as a teacher sometimes too. And it's really by assessment. So what do you assess? Are people enjoying the rehearsal? Are people learning in the rehearsal? I think if those two things are happening, that's a good starting place. Then you can get a little bit more specific. Let's pretend you're a section leader. Is my section getting better every day? Are there any individuals that I need to deal with? Like, is there somebody who needs extra help? If they're not getting better every day, what do I need to do? And then if you ever kind of are a little bit lost, if you don't go down that road too far, don't worry about it. Maybe go and ask another leader, hey, could you watch us for this week? And if you think there's something else I need to do, would you tell me? Like asking the drum major if you're a section leader, or if you're a drum major, maybe asking one of the staff members, hey, could you watch this week and see if there's something else that I need to do? One other thing I might show you is if you go online and look for drum corps rehearsals, there's some things that we've stolen over the years that have helped us a lot. Like these guys will tell you just in the last 2 years, the tower will give instruction. Like we'll say, okay, let's go from letter B to letter C, playing only. Then it was Anna's job this last year to get everybody on the same page. So she would say letter B to C, playing only, set, and then she called them to go. And if they weren't ready, she stopped. And if she didn't, I kind of made a big deal and said, Anna, are you sure the band is ready to go right now? And embarrassed her like crazy, which made everybody else feel terrible. So they didn't do that much more. Psychology, everybody, psychology. So what we're doing is trying to find the best, most effective way and the least offensive way. There was a time in my career where I didn't care if it offended, and there are times where it may, especially if you've offended others already. If you're doing something wrong, we have to fix it. So how do you gauge yourself? Are people enjoying the rehearsal? Are people learning in the rehearsal? Those two things. Number 3, is your section getting better every week? And then I'd also look at, you can tell. If at the end of rehearsal, you say, hey, flute meeting right here, and everybody goes, oh gosh, you're having too many flute meetings. If everybody goes like, hey, I need to talk to you real fast. Hey, I just wanted to get together and let you know we're meeting here Friday night after the football game for dinner. See you then. They're like, yay. Those are great meetings to have. And you have to have those that you can have the meeting where you call them in. And I know the trumpets have had this a couple of times. Actually, all of the sections have. Hey, guys, we need to figure it out. Like that was pretty crummy today. Let's try and do better. If it's something we need to address, we'll do that tomorrow. But let's come back better. And that's sometimes all that needs to be said. I would try to do less than too much. And the reason I say that is because you can push people really far, and that's usually something you can't come back from. Ask the director at the last part of it and ask them to watch you. He or she would be able to tell you, here's what I'm seeing. Cecily, are you making any headway on the saving of the questions and answers?
Getting closer, but they should be available. It looks like the way that I have it set up that it should be available.
Okay,
so.
Sounds good. Anna, as our senior drum major, is there any question on there that you think that I should close out with? Yeah. Oh, she's writing something right now. Never mind. Ooh, while she's looking at that, I'll do 2 more, this one and then that last one. For those of you that are younger and wanting to be a leader and you're afraid of the older leaders with you, that's always something that comes up. Like, how do I assert myself as maybe a sophomore or junior with a senior? And I got to tell you, the biggest thing is communication. Talking with them often. You say, well, they don't want to talk to me. That's okay. You want to talk to them. And just asking questions and advice of how would you handle this? We've actually had a couple of times in my tenure a sophomore who was a section leader. And one of the things I told each of them was to make sure that you have the upperclassmen on your team. Support them and encourage them. Never have a fight with those other senior leaders in front of anybody. Outside of band, maybe so, but never in front of anybody else. Show them that you support them, even if they're sometimes not doing the right thing. But remember we talked about being uncomfortable? Sometimes that being uncomfortable is going to that older leader and saying, instead of saying, hey, you need to start doing your job, you turned into about hey, I need some help with discipline. The trumpet section is chaos right now, and I need your help. Let's do this one. The percussion section is chaos right now, so pretty typical. But I, as one of the younger leaders, need your help in reining this in. How can we do that? You'll be surprised at some of the answers that you get. And if you start empowering people, you can empower older people, you can empower your director just by those thoughts that you care and want to know. It's pretty awesome. So that would be my place to start. And then if you need more help, talk to a staff member, talk to a director, and don't ask them to fix it. Ask them how do they engage that senior? And maybe you can figure out how you can engage that senior. Anna, you got something for me? Go for it. Unmute yourself and hop in.
Hi guys, I'm Anna, nice to meet you. So this wasn't a specific question from a person, but kind of, I tried to pull a lot of questions together that a lot of people asked, so this is a general thing. How best to resolve and notice tension between section leaders and the people who are leaders in the section. So instead of section leaders addressing issues between non-leadership and younger band members, but issues between leadership themselves, and whether that be drum major or section leader itself.
So basically, how do you deal with conflict in those things, right? Yeah. So the first thing is just finding out what it's really about. Often it's not about the event. It's more about past stuff that happened and being able to take responsibility for what you did. Even if it wasn't you who started it, even if it wasn't whatever, just, okay, I can get to what our ultimate goal is for us to get better faster. And I'm willing to do whatever I need to do to make that happen. So that idea of, I'm really sorry that sounded like this. I didn't mean it to be derogatory. I didn't mean to be disrespectful. I messed up. I'm really sorry. I would never want you to think that. When you start to take away that ammunition, there's not a lot left to be angry about. However, there's still times, and the last part of that is sincerely apologizing. Like, I am very sorry. I never would mean to hurt you. I wanted to be a leader so I could help the band, not hurt us. So I'm very sorry. Don't then go into, but you. Think about a different way of saying it. Sometimes I get overwhelmed with having to say the same thing over and over about discipline. Sometimes it's so hard for me to manage all the people in the section, and so I lose my temper, and I didn't mean to do that with you. Can you help me to make this better? Giving them a job and asking for forgiveness are two really powerful ways that you can help to curb and ebb the tide of conflict. People love drama, and it just wants to grow and grow and grow and grow until somebody says, you know what? It's my fault. I'm really sorry. I will be much more, I'll be careful with that. I'll do my very best to not lose my temper. Now, I may not have thought I lost my temper, but people perceived that. And so it happened. And so I'm sorry. And when you start to take that, when people still keep grudges, it's kind of like, wait, then it's on you. And we can't control everybody. We can just make the conditions favorable to make them successful. I'm sure that's a big thing that all of you deal with, especially in dealing with peer-to-peer relations. Make sure to talk with an adult. If it ever starts to feel like this isn't getting any better, and in fact it's getting worse, talk with an adult. Talk and know this. Sometimes talking with your parents is a little rough because they don't understand all the stuff with band. It's not the same as math class. It's not the same as English. Maybe for those of you who maybe attend a church, or those of you whose parents are part of like a Kiwanis club or something where there are a lot of adults they have to work with, ask them how they deal with maybe difficult peers. And right there, that'll give you some thoughts into maybe how to deal with this a little bit better, okay? I know that we have so many questions, and I appreciate it. It looks like we have about 77 that were answered and several others that are being asked and answered right now. So Cecily's going to keep that open for us as long as we can. I think when we end the meeting, that will go away. I'm actually finishing one question right now. Other majors, is there another question that you feel like you'd like to add real quickly while I finish up typing this one? Caroline, you may want to speak to the person who does a number of different things, like with jazz band and orchestra, all of those things. And also the point of when you came in, how young were you when you became principal in symphonic band? Yeah, so why don't you maybe talk up to that piece of with older students, how did you engage the older students to work with them?
Okay, hi. So I started out as a freshman and I was ensemble, and by December-ish, I was playing principal trumpet in our top ensemble, and it became a really difficult situation in the beginning to deal with all of the senior and junior trumpet guys who don't give you the same respect immediately. But the biggest thing I found for me is to gain respect not through demanding any attention or demanding your leadership position, but more showing what you have to offer and just coming every day prepared and always having your work done and always coming, being able to play your part and do all of this. And eventually they start to understand that you have what it takes to have that position. And it's also really helpful to develop the relationships outside of your leadership position so they are more of your friend than competitor.
Thanks, Caroline. I appreciate it. And that gave me a little bit of time to finish that up. So I don't want to keep anybody any longer than what we said we were going to do. We said this would be an hour. Thank you all so much for tuning in. I really appreciate it a lot. We'll see if we can keep the questions going. And what I'll do is maybe drum majors will maybe divvy them up and try to answer them separately. So thank you to, in fact, drum majors and Cecily, why don't we get back together and kind of talk through how we can best do that as soon as we get done right here, okay? Cecily, are you okay setting that up and sending to us? Is that okay?
Yes.
Great. To everybody out there, thank you so much. I hope you're doing well. Let us know what you enjoyed or what we can maybe do differently next time or what topics you'd like for us to cover. Thanks so much. Take care, everybody.